Hey everybody, welcome to our essay analysis for Wharton. My name is Liza Weale and I'm a senior consultant here with mbaMission, and I'm excited to talk to you about Wharton's essays. Before I even read them, I just want to tell you one thing. Wharton is really focused, you'll see this as you start to look at the essay prompts, they're really focused on making sure you understand Wharton. So keep that in the back of your mind as we look at these questions in a little bit more detail. So essay number one, the first question they're asking is, what do you hope to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA? You'll have a whopping 500 words to tell them all of that. And essay number two is, describe an impactful experience or accomplishment that is not reflected elsewhere in your application. How will you use what you learned through that experience to contribute to the Wharton community? And for that, you have 400 words. So you can see in both of these questions, they're asking something specifically about Wharton, but they're also asking about you. So let's dive into both of those in more detail. So first off, what do you hope to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA? Here's the scoop with this question, guys. This is what we refer to as a typical personal statement essay. The school is asking to understand what your goals are. Remember, you're going to business school. It's a professional degree, so it makes sense that they're asking about what you envision for yourself professionally in the future. As I said, it's one of these sort of quintessential personal statement or goal statement essays, and in such an essay, there are three elements that you need to convey, three elements in this puzzle, as I say. Where are you going? Where have you been? And what's the connection, in this case, Wharton, how Wharton will, how you can use Wharton to connect where you are going with where you've been. It's somewhat formulaic, but I want to talk about each element in a little bit more detail, okay? So let's start with where you're going. And when I say where are you going, what I'm talking about are your goals for who you're going to be in the future, both in the short term, in the long term. And they are asking specifically, again, look at the prompt. They're asking about this in terms of your profession. So I want you to think about where you'll be 5 years and then maybe 10 or 15 years from now. When you're thinking about your goals, you need to make sure they satisfy the following. They need to be logical. They need to make sense based on what you've been up to. They can't be a complete jump from where you've been unless it makes sense that you can indeed make that jump. So they've got to be logical. They also have to be ambitious. Look, going to Wharton, it's going to change your life. They're not looking for just a little bit of a step change in your current day-to-day job. They're looking for someone who really sees big things for them in the future. This does not mean you all have to write you're going to become a CEO, but not at all. But I do want you to really think about, this sort of impact that you can have, and in that role in the long-term future, what is it going to be? What sort of impact in your job will you be having? And that might be some title, it might be some industry or some company. And then the third thing is that your goals need to be authentic. Schools can really figure out when you're not being truthful about your goals. So I always say, start with what you really, really do want to do, and make sure that path makes sense. If that path doesn't make sense, try to figure out a nearer term path that feels more reasonable but is still exciting to you, because not only is it going to be easier to communicate in this essay if it's authentic and true for you, but it's going to be easier to communicate in the interview portion as well. Okay? So that's where you're going, and that's what you need to do there. Let's talk about where you've been. And this is basically your past experience. When you're thinking about your past experience, and in this essay, what you need to talk about, you want to include components in the past that are relevant to where you're going, right? So, for example, perhaps you have been in management consulting and you want to move into more an internal, move within a company and run a business unit. So as you're thinking about how your goals might be, or your past might be relevant to those goals, perhaps you've worked with a client and you've seen the way that the senior management team has the opportunity to run a business unit. Perhaps in your Wharton essay, in that case, you can share that experience and how, though you enjoyed advising this client, you really want to get inside a company and do the same. So as you think about what to showcase, make sure it somehow, it just proves relevancy of your future goals. You could also use the opportunity of this essay to highlight an accomplishment that proves skills and showcases excellence. So in the example I just used, if you were a management consultant in the past and after business school, you're hoping to get into an internal business unit manager type role in an industry you're passionate about, you could really go deep on an experience that you've had as a consultant where you partnered, for example, very tightly with the management team of a client and how you really enjoyed seeing more than just the advisory role, but focused on the implementation. And when you did the implementation, you nailed it. My point here is, whatever you choose here, you might have an opportunity to remind Wharton what a rock star you are in the story you showcase. Okay? All right. So that's where you've been, right? So we know where you're going. We know how it relates to where you've been. And now we need to talk about how Wharton connects both of those things. Wharton, what you want to think about it, it's the bridge that is going to enable you to reach your goals. So in this section, I don't want you to pander. I don't want you to tell Wharton how awesome they are and how they're the only ones to have a certain course, because they're probably not. But instead, I want you to be really specific on why Wharton is a good fit for you. And I want you to be explicit on the why. What do I mean by that? Let's see. For example, perhaps you're going to talk about perhaps you're interested in the leadership ventures, the venture program that Wharton has where you have an opportunity to travel anywhere in the world, basically, depending on what course offerings they have in a given year, and really test your ability to work within a team under high stress. Perhaps that's really appealing to you, but I want you to go further. Why? Why do you need it? Oh, well, maybe you need it because that sort of making decisions on the fly with limited information, that might be exactly what you're going to be required to do in your future profession, right? So the context might be different. You might not be out there scaling a mountain in your day job after Wharton, but the experience of having to think on your feet could be very relevant. Be explicit in this essay of why you need that experience to become a stronger leader. So in short, this part of the essay on why Wharton, it should still be more about you, or as much about you as it is about Wharton. This entire essay, cumulatively, should be more about you than it is about Wharton. Okay? All right, so that's essay number 1. And really, you do want to think about it really roughly about covering, a third-ish on where you're going, a third-ish on where you've been, and a third-ish on how Wharton connects the two. Those are the 3 components of this essay. All right, essay number 2. I paraphrased the tagline here just so it would fit. Describe an impactful experience or accomplishment. How will you use what you learned to contribute to Wharton? Hey, you have 400 words to do this. So here's my advice. Start with a question and think about what you're already conveying through the rest of your application. If you've told them, think about what they've seen about you as a professional, what they see in your short answers in your resume, and think about what's important to you. Is there some story outside of this that is really critical to understanding who you are? Perhaps something in the community, something that someone in your life, could be anything. If you haven't been able to convey that, this essay might be a great opportunity for you to do it. But perhaps your best story is still something to do with work and it's on your resume. That leads me to point number 2. Do not assume that not reflected elsewhere means that, it's not mentioned at all. It maybe is mentioned on your resume, but maybe you want to go deeper in an experience. Maybe you were tested to make some ethical choices that really had you thinking differently, or maybe you struggled to mentor somebody and had to change your ways. Even though that might be mentioned either might be mentioned in a letter of recommendation, or you refer to it, or it's somewhat mentioned on the resume, don't worry about it. What I often say about the resume is it's the black and white, the stories are the color. Likewise, a letter of recommendation, that's one person's perspective. This story is from your perspective. So really do think about, what are you conveying in totality in your application? Are there critical moments that you haven't conveyed or talked about, and which one of those is the best one to focus on, okay? And that's going to all depend on you, what they already know about you, and really, I guess, which story is most fundamental for us to know about in order to know you, to understand you. Show, don't tell. You guys see this bullet, you probably heard this mantra. What do I mean? You really want to really let the reader see how the story unfolded. Don't just tell what happened and then the learnings you had from it. Relive moments of it. Make us understand what was going on, what you did, what you saw, the choices that you made, instead of just telling, here's what happened, right? Let us relive the experience a little bit with you. It's an extraordinarily compelling way to tell a story, because it makes us be inside your head and get to know you, and usually feel more of a kinship with you. Be explicit about what you learned. Look at the prompt. They're trying to understand, how will you use what you learned? Well, you need to tell them what it is you learned as you share that story. And then in terms of your contribution, again, this is another opportunity to prove to Wharton that you've done your research. And I'll tell you a little bit in a second about how you can do that research. But you want to show Wharton that you really have thought about the different clubs, the different, the way the learning teams work, the different, the courses, whatever. And you've really thought about how you can contribute to it. I say here, think broadly about contribution. If you had a learning on how to better mentor people, I don't know, I'm making this up. Well, maybe in school you want to be a mentor, whether it's their local, opportunity to mentor or tutor folks in the local community. Maybe it's mentoring first years when you're a second year. So that could be a specific way, but maybe there's something about also like a role that you're going to play within even your learning team. You're going to test yourself to perhaps coach your classmates in finance, if you were for finance, or in accounting, if you have accounting in your experience. So this can be both some skills that you might contribute, or you might even get involved in certain clubs because of this experience. Nothing is really off the table. I just, sometimes people just say, and I'm going to contribute this energy to my learning team. That really doesn't tell me you've done your homework about Wharton, and it's not really specific enough about what you're going to contribute. So get specific as you write about it. Okay. So that's it. That's my quick I wish I could say easy essay analysis. I know it's still going to be a bear to tackle, but hopefully this gives you some good things to think about. A few quick things. I mentioned research about Wharton. You need to do this for both the first essay on what you hope to gain professionally from Wharton and the second essay. You need to know Wharton. Talk to your friends, connect with current students, do your research online. Also, download our Insider's Guide on Wharton. It's like 100+ pages all about Wharton's programs, their professors, those ventures I mentioned. It's an excellent resource for you to sort of get a sense of what it's like being a student at Wharton. Also, if you are have any questions about, gosh, what story, or do I have the right stuff for Wharton, any of that stuff, if you haven't already, sign up for a free consultation and chat with one of us. I'd love to chat with you more, or any one of my colleagues. It's 30 minutes of time, one-on-one, your questions, whatever is on your mind, we can help with. Okay, so definitely sign up for that. And then lastly, I'll mention this, just because it's special to Wharton. Wharton has or hasn't had in the past, we'll see what happens this year, a special team-based discussion interview. It's a little different than the rest of the schools, which is why we host a simulated group discussion with Wharton applicants. So if you are interviewing with Wharton later down the road, which I certainly hope all of you will be, give us a holler. We can certainly help you with that interview prep as well. I wish you guys good luck, and do let us give a shout if you would like those resources or a free consultation. Thanks.